Some of you aren't convinced that there is a God, and if there is, you've given up on Him. Others of you are in a culture of Christianity where everybody believes in God, but few live like it. Still others have tried different spiritual experiences, but haven't found satisfaction. My question for each of you is this: would you be willing to take the Lord God seriously? Now, you may think I'm going on a rant, but I'm actually going to turn the tables and say, God is taking you seriously. In fact, He takes you, all humanity, and creation seriously. He promises to be faithful even though He knows that humanity won't be. So let's take a look at this first, and then we'll return to our question. We're going to look at the life and the times of Noah. Now, everybody knows Noah. We know the ark and the animals. But do you know the backstory of why God sent the flood? And do you know the promise that God made to Noah and his family after the flood? Noah was a righteous man. He was blameless and walked faithfully with God. But by contrast, the earth was corrupt, and God saw that it was full of violence. And all the people on the earth, they were corrupt in all their ways, and violence filled the earth. They were totally depraved. And you know what? They weren't the least bit concerned about it. So God said to Noah, I intend to make an end of all that lives, for through men the land is filled with violence, and I'm about to destroy them together with the land. And then the events began to unfold. God gave Noah the dimensions and the plans for building the ark, and He allowed him 100 years to build it, while God waited patiently. God is not willing that any should perish, but that all should come to repentance. But not one person was the least bit concerned about it. No one repented. No one cared to seek for God. So the animals began to come into the ark, 2 by 2, male and female. Noah and his family, all 8 of them, went into the ark, and God shut the door. And the fountains of the deep began to break up. And it says the rain fell for 40 days and 40 nights. And eventually it stopped. And eventually the water subsided, and they could step out on dry land. And then God said to Noah and to his family, starting at verse 9 in chapter 9 of Genesis, I now establish my covenant with you and with your descendants after you and with every living creature that was with you, the birds, the livestock, and all the wild animals, all those that came out of the ark with you, every living creature on earth. I establish my covenant with you. Never again will all life be cut off by the waters of a flood. Never again will there be a flood to destroy the earth. And God said, this is the sign of the covenant I am making between me and you and every living creature with you, a covenant for all generations to come. I have set my rainbow in the clouds, and it will be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. God established a covenant. He put the rainbow in the sky, and it was a reminder that God would keep His promises. Remember your most dramatic rainbow? Mine was against a dark gray cloud just a few months ago with a double brilliant rainbow, a reminder of God's promise. It's in effect saying this: I know that all humans will continue to do evil, But despite that, I'm not going to destroy the earth with a flood again. Instead, it will be a reliable place for us to work together. God is promising to be faithful, even though humans won't be. And this is not the only covenant that God has made. He's made a covenant promise with Abraham, with Israel, and with King David. And each of these promises are intended to start with that person or that group, and then to bless the entire world and to make God and His ways known. Here's the problem. Since humanity walked away to create a world of their own on their own terms, that relationship, that partnership that we had with God was broken. And it's resulted in a world of corruption, injustice, violence, tragedy, and death. The good creation has become compromised. But thankfully, God wouldn't settle for letting humanity get their just desserts, getting what they deserved. Instead, He inserted Himself into the story, and then He made promises. He asked for certain commitments like obedience and doing what was right. These were the first steps in restoring our relationship with God. And ultimately, God makes an even greater promise. It's called the New Covenant. It's the promise to all humanity. We read about it in Ezekiel 36. And I'm going to read verse 26 and 27. I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit in you. I will remove from you your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. And I will put my spirit in you and move you to follow my decrees and be careful to keep my laws. Through the death of Jesus Christ on the cross, we have been given the promise. We have been given a new covenant that He will forgive sin and He will restore back the relationship that we have lost. Which brings us to our key spiritual insight. The amazing story of what God is doing in the world is a far better story than any other. It's a better story than being the master of your own destiny. It's a better story than economic equality solving all the problems of the world. It's a better story than being one with God, one with nature, and one with the universe. It's a better story than recreating humanity through science, medicine, and technology. No, this amazing story of God is the better story. And I hope that you can grasp this amazing specialness of God's intervention into our lives in the life of the world, because He takes us seriously. And that brings me back to my original question. Whether you're an atheist, a cultural Christian, or someone who is searching, would you be willing to take a closer, more honest look? Would you be willing to take the Lord God seriously? Taking God seriously begins with an open heart. Regardless of where you are in your present relationship with Him, I encourage you to open up your heart in prayer. Begin talking to God and expressing your thoughts to Him. And you might start with a prayer like this. Lord, if what you claim is true, please guide me, teach me, and open to me the reality of who you are. Give me an understanding of you that is reasonably, convincing, and that leads to the life that you promise. That is a good beginning, open-hearted prayer. We take God seriously when we let Him define Himself. The Bible, God's revelation, is all about God and His story. And we read it with freshness and with an open mind to understand who He is and who He has revealed Himself to be. And I encourage you to begin by reading the Psalms. That's the book that's pretty much right in the middle of the Bible. Open up to Psalms, begin reading there, and you will read things that help define who God really is. You'll read these verses. But you, O Lord, are a God merciful and gracious, slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love and faithfulness. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. God reigns over the nations. God sits on His holy throne. And finally, I would say take God seriously by taking His Son, Jesus Christ, seriously. In Christ, God gives us a full and complete expression of Himself. And your own completeness will only be realized in Christ. I urge you to escape the emptiness of life on your own terms, to take God and His story seriously, and to be reconciled with God through Christ.